SEWI 2023 is Seeds of Innovation, innovative solutions for a water-wise and better world. My name is Sergio Campos. I'm the head of Water and Sanitation at the Inter-American Development Bank. To those that are here present, welcome, and to those that are joining online, welcome as well. It's always a pleasure to come to SEWI to showcase what we've done, but also learn from other regions and improve and collaborate in the challenge that we have ahead. I just want to start by reminding us some of the obvious, but the obvious sometimes it's worth repeating it. Water, SDG 6, water and sanitation are essential for health, education, poverty, gender, and many other goals. The pandemic has showed that we were not prepared to fight the pandemic and the different challenges that we have in order to have sustainable services and resilient infrastructure. Sustainable services because when COVID was, hand washing was the first measure to fight COVID. Not everybody had fresh water or a good source of water. And the importance of resilient infrastructure because also during COVID, climate change through droughts and floods affected so many people. So we need not only sustainable services, but resilient infrastructure. And to those challenges, there's the urban challenge. Latin America is urbanizing itself at a rapid pace, and so the rest of the world. As well as to talking about water security, but not in the context of one country or one municipality, because 71% of the surface water in Latin America is in transboundary waters. It occupies 60% of our land, 40% of our population lives. So we cannot talk about water security if we don't talk about it in a transboundary or shared water. Just going into SDG 6, the challenges that we have is improving the quality of access to water, improving the quality of access to sanitation, to be able to address the problem that informal settlements or this type of neighborhoods, the ones that are projected, are having in order to address particularly the problem in sanitation in a sustainable way. Understand that our solutions need to take better care of our environment, and the inequality that exists between the people that live in the right-hand side to the people that live in the left-hand side, which is obviously reflected. That picture is not a collage. It's just some of them have it in abundance, and some of the ones that are next to it, they don't have it. And not to mention the inequality in gender in terms of sourcing water for households, not only at the rural, but also in the urban. 200 million without access to continuous water, 490, close to 490 without access to sanitation. That's 1/3 of the Latin American population without access to continuous sources of water, potable water, and more than 2/3 of the Latin American population without access to adequate sludge management. 40% of the water that we produce is leaked into the networks. 30 or 40% of our infrastructure in the rural areas need to be some form of refurbishment after the 2 or 3 years. And only 6% of the private investment that comes to Latin America goes to the water sector. A lot to do. If we continue doing the same way we've been doing, the business as usual is the continuum, we're going to achieve the SDGs in 100 years, and we may be able to achieve the MDGs in 2041. And I highlight all of these points that I think they're obvious, that they're worth repeating, because we need to change the way we work, the change we do, and the change we approach what we're doing. And that's the invitation to innovate. And innovation cannot only be digital or technical, it needs to be also operational, and we need to train our people. We need to involve, it needs to be social. Innovation needs to include the beneficiaries, the affected people. And it also needs to be through nature-based solutions, because otherwise we're going to continue building large gray infrastructures in order to address problems that are surpassing our capacity to deal with them. There's a new reality that requires a new model of governance, a new model of managing our water resources. And And this new governance, it needs to be addressed or changed in order to address the challenges that we have in climate change. The top-down model that we're used to is no longer relevant. We need to, in the decisions that we make on a daily basis or on a yearly basis or an annual basis, include the beneficiaries and the people that are impacted by that. So in order to address through innovation the challenge that we have, at this Water Week we prepared 12 sessions. The first one talks about building a dynamic innovation ecosystems, the role of the ecosystems and catalytic groups that can help us innovate and sustain the innovations and the results that we have. Then we have a very good story to tell in terms of social innovation through Lazos de Agua, which is a partnership that we have with Cirque du Soleil, Fundación FEMSA, and Coca-Cola Foundation. Then we start our first session that is part of CIWI's main program, lessons on innovation from other sectors. We want to learn what did the energy sector, the transport, and the telecom did different, or how they mainstream innovation to achieve the results that they have, and what can we learn from them. Then we're going to have on Tuesday our first session, Source of Innovation Award, Fundación FEMSA. We award entrepreneurship. We've been doing that for close to 12 years, so we're going to have our session on that there. Then we go into the second session of lessons learned from other sectors, in which we're going to hear from the wonders that Israel did, and they are very water-scarce, in a water-scarce territory, securing energy, food, and water for its population. We're also going to learn from the challenges that Punjab is facing, as well as Mendoza, as well as Cape Town. And then we're going to have a talk show to learn how innovation is critical to transboundary water cooperation, and how can we enhance that agenda. Continuing on Tuesday, which is going to be a very busy day, we're going to have a cocktail sponsored by our colleagues from Fundación FEMSA. And then we're going to have our last session on Tuesday, which is innovation in governance and social innovation. On Wednesday, we start with innovation in operators. Operators are responsible for providing water and sanitation to most of our cities, so they have a key role and important to mainstream innovation in them. Then we have a third session of the main program of CIWI, which is a pitch by fire, how innovations from other sectors of our own sectors can harness the change. After that, we're going to have innovation for inclusive services of water and sanitation, and we finished on Thursday with innovation paving a way for sustainable future in financing. So it's a great agenda, lots of topics, innovation at the center. I want to thank all our key collaborating partners and all the partners, the more than 20 partners that we had that helped us organize these sessions. And with that, I would like to introduce our first panelist, Will Sarney, a great esteemed colleague and friend, which is the CEO or Water Foundry, CEO and founder of Water Foundry. He's been not only doing cutting edge things in innovation, but he's also working in our region to help us move the needle forward and to mainstream innovation in all aspects of our region. So without any further delay, Will, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Sergio. Thank you, everyone. It's always an honor to participate with friends and colleagues. IDB, FEMSA Foundation, they are noble, committed to change at speed, and I value that enormously. And as Sergio pointed out, we have an opportunity to do better, faster. And I believe that we're all here because of that commitment. So when I think about, well, how do we do better in terms of driving innovation in technology, innovation in business partnerships, business models, and so on, I go back to something I learned from my friend and colleague, Tom Higley, talking about wicked problems. And if you've seen me on social media, hopefully for the better, you know I talk about wicked problems. I now talk about super wicked problems, and most recently catalytic communities. So how do we do better with respect to collective action? And again, it's not to replace collective action, it's really to think about how do we do better, how do we do it faster, and how do we have an impact so we don't have to wait 100 years, because we candidly don't have that. So with that, I'm just going to touch on a few topics. These slides are borrowed heavily from Tom Higley, so full attribution here. And Tom, you said that was a good idea, right? Okay, good. I'm glad I checked now. So a little bit about framing wicked problems. It's important to understand really what we're trying to solve here, or trying to tame. And water, unfortunately, fits very nicely into the definition of a wicked problem. Oh, and one other thing. I'm an optimist, so I believe in the right side of the tree here. I believe we can have abundance, and we don't have to tolerate scarcity and some of the other issues. So what is a wicked problem? Tom will go into this a little bit in, well, certainly more detail when he comes up next. But the thing that really captured my attention when I first started talking to Tom about wicked problems is that one of the attributes is that no one stakeholder can solve or tame wicked problems. And it's really incumbent upon us to bring in not just the usual suspects, but the unusual suspects, and engage them in a conversation and get some new ideas into the mix. Recently, I have embraced super wicked problems. And the example the authors use for super wicked problems is climate change. I threw in water because I think it fits in there. So as you think about what are we really trying to solve or trying to tame in the scheme of things, the framework of wicked problems, super wicked problems, is really handy. Now, the question here, again, this is a slide borrowed from Tom with pride, but who solves wicked problems? And if you think about what we're seeing in terms of stakeholder engagement and bringing diverse groups into the room to really think about what can we do better, faster, it includes entrepreneurs that have speed but no scale. It includes the public sector that has size, scale, but not that they don't, the public sector doesn't have speed, but they're slow compared to an entrepreneur. My personal view is that multinationals are uniquely well suited to be a key player in building these ecosystems, because depending on who they are in the industry sector, they can have speed, they certainly have scale, they have convening power, and so on. And working closely with foundations, development banks, entrepreneurs, and so on, they really can come up with solutions that we undoubtedly could not have come up with alone. Catalytic communities, again, don't read the fine print. This is an old slide that has something in the brackets here that I'll pull out relating this to digital watersheds. But what I love about this is that it encourages, actually it's essential to have diversity, a shared purpose, and creates something, creates a solution, a tool or a movement or a new business model, and so on. And again, courtesy of Tom for the definition. So with that, I'm going to have Tom come up and say a few words, and then Tom is going to sit in one of these chairs. I'll call up Sergio, and while I have the stage, we'll also call up Ana Laura Elizondo from PHMSA Foundation, who leads water security, and Dr. Stefan Uhlenbrook, World Meteorological Organization, Director of Hydrology, Water, and Cryosphere. Wow. Your business card must be very crowded, Stefan. So with that, Tom, come on up, and then we'll get the gang up.
Thank you, Will. Thank you, Sergio. Thank you, all of you, for being here and for giving your time and attention and focus to the wicked problem and really the collection of wicked problems, super wicked problems, that include what's happening in water around the world. I'm here today, I think, because my particular focus over the last probably 8 years or so has been on wicked problems, on problems related to climate, water, health, and more. And I'm going to say just a couple of things about what wicked problems are as distinct from tame problems. In fact, I'll carve this up a little more finely. Let's start with simple problems. You make a cup of coffee, it's simple. There's a recipe. It's pretty objective. You know what should go in, and you know what you should get out. So there's an objective input, an objective output, and you know whether you've done it well or not. That's a simple problem. A complicated problem. Building a 737. Not so simple. Lots of precision required, lots of inputs. Nevertheless, with the appropriate process, talent, engineering know-how, you can do this. You can build a 737, and you know what it's supposed to do when it's finished. It's supposed to be able to take off and to land and to fly safely. All that's supposed to work, and if it does, you've done the job well. Wicked problems are a different animal. Wicked problems are not simple problems or complicated problems. They're complex. They tend to arise in the context of complex adaptive systems, and to understand them requires far more time and attention and appreciation for being able to see things that you wouldn't ordinarily see. So it requires diversity of perspective. When Will talked about catalytic community, and I think, by the way, of catalytic community as one of the ways that we can begin to grapple with and deal with wicked problems in the world, catalytic community affords us the capacity to be able to see and take on perspectives we wouldn't see otherwise. That's why diversity of participation, cross-sector participation and connection around a shared purpose is particularly important. And that's not enough. So that diversity of participation, cross-sector participation, has to be aligned around a shared purpose that leads to collaboration and learning with a goal, the goal of actually creating something that hasn't existed before, the goal of creating something we need. That could be a project. That could be a venture. That could be an institution. That could be a movement. So I'm talking about wicked problems in the context of things like water and climate. I'll add one other thing here in the mix before I take up too much airtime. And that's that in order to make headway in this context, I focus on what it is entrepreneurs can bring to bear in contexts that support what we need from a water perspective. And when I think about that, when I think about what entrepreneurs contribute in this context, I urge them not just to focus on the wicked problem to be addressed and the complexity associated with this, but also on points of leverage. And the leverage we're looking for in the context of wicked problems is some adjacent possibility, some place on which to stand to be able to give effect to a future that's actually not seen yet, but is close. I'll point out that the most successful tech companies created in the history of the world have entrepreneurs who created solutions based on adjacent possibility, and the thing that they did couldn't have been done 5 years before, maybe not even a year before. So we're looking for opportunities that can arise to begin to address wicked problems related to water, and we're looking for them. We're looking for these problems in the context of catalytic community and adjacent possibility. This is not trivial. I would say that we don't have lots of examples of doing this successfully in the context of water. Lots of examples of success doing this in the context of climate. We don't, but we can have. So, like Will, I'm an optimist, a huge optimist about what can happen in this context, and we need to leverage every available adjacent possibility to be able to achieve this. That means artificial intelligence. That means new ways of engaging and connecting with one another to support catalytic community that can give rise to the things that we're talking about here. And I'm excited because I think as we become engaged in this kind of conversation and become committed to addressing wicked problems, we actually will begin to see that we found a path through, that we found numerous ways actually to create value in the world. And that's what I'm excited to see. That's what I'm here for. You're ready for me to sit down now, aren't you?
No, I was nodding in approval.
I see, okay. So I'm deeply honored to be here, and I'm looking forward to the conversation that will happen at the panel level, because I think what we're all going to do is explore things that are more difficult than what I've talked about so far, and I'm excited about that. I'll conclude at this point my piece of things, and we can go on with the rest of what's happening here.
Thanks, Tom, stay here.
Okay.
I'm going to call up the rest of the group.
Would you like me to sit down here?
You can sit down. Okay, great. So we're going to bring everyone up, and we're going to have a conversation, and we'll have a bit of Q&A. So Sergio, Anawara, Stefan. I love the cup of coffee story. It should be that easy. All right. So in order to sort of provide some context, if each of you could just talk a little bit about, what you're doing, touch on your role. I think, for some of you, it's obvious, but yeah, Stefan, if you can talk a little bit about, what you do at WMO, and then a little bit on, just briefly, because I'm going to come back to it, what are you doing around, innovative ecosystems, engaging with other stakeholders, the notion of catalytic communities and how you're thinking about having a bigger impact, and then Anawara, Tom, and Sergio. Sound good?
Sure. Thank you. Should it?
Do you want to stand up?
No, it's fine. I take the microphone. No, thank you so much. Stefan Lundborg, working for WMO, where I'm overseeing the water-related activities. Director for hydrology, water, and cryosphere, as you said. Yeah, cryosphere is snow and ice. It's the UN it's somebody else said it's not the most innovative tank you can think of. But we still try to kind of address that and make a contribution. I really appreciate also in the previous session, which we just had at 2 o'clock with you and Tom, and this thinking about wicked problems, because I believe that water problems are often wicked problems. Also climate change, as you said, obviously WMO, the World Meteorological Organization, works a lot on climate. So it's weather, climate, and water, and I'm director of water. But when somebody comes to me maybe in a casual discussion and says, how do we solve water? I really don't know what to say. I probably turn away, because I feel it's so complicated and you don't know really where to start. So what we do to try to address that successfully, I think we unpack that. And if you say water and climate change, that's still very general. So what do you do in water and climate change? There's water quality and quantity and all sorts of aspects, and water supply and sanitation, et cetera, et cetera. So you pick out one, and one could be, for instance, what's the impact of climate change on hydrological extremes? So floods and droughts. So many of our papers have shown that we have an increase of frequency and severity of floods and droughts. So then you frame it already a little bit more, and then, okay, the floods and droughts, what can we do about it? So we can't really do much against increasing strong rainfall. So mitigating climate change is one, but it's out of our personal control. So in a given catchment or city, you could think, so early warning system is maybe something useful to kind of provide services to the society that they get prepared and that they're able to deal with these hazards. And then, early warning, okay, but also there you need many aspects. So we kind of unpack further, and you need better observation methods, you need better data sharing and data banks, and you need better models and predictive capabilities and warning of society. And again, you then, well, maybe we focus on the observation part and just really unpack further to make this very complex, super wicked problem, as we heard before, and something which is only wicked, maybe not super wicked anymore, and then try for the example of better monitoring and observation. So what's the problem here? Is it we don't have data, or data is not shared, or it's the wrong quality, or what are the vulnerabilities of society because of that? And then we kind of unpack further and further, and only then we start to design the program. and I think if we start so big and say we want to solve all the world's problem, doesn't help us. So really unpacking as much as we can till we get to a level of granularity that allows us to design an intervention, to design innovation needs that address the problem. I think that's maybe one of the answers. I have more, but I want to give the floor to my colleagues. Yeah.
Anawara?
Sure. Well, what we do in Fundación FEMSA Foundation, we do collective actions since 2010. I lead the water security program in FEMSA Foundation for Latin America, for the countries that we are in. But answering your question on what I do every day is to work with people and relationships and try to understand the problems of each different location, each basin, and in the water security context, the 5 dimension, which is already complex, and try to find solutions and innovations to address the wicked problems we have. So I'll stop there because I want you to be taking these 2 points. I think it's relationships, network people, and the wicked problems and understanding water security on the different locations.
I'm glad you brought up that point. People, trust, we talked about that in the prior session, and myself included, I think we tend to forget about the human side, that it's the glue, it's really the thing that matters. So thanks, I'll come back. So Tom, I should have mentioned X-Genesis and 10-10-10 and so on, but if you can talk about essentially your journey from 10-10-10, X-Genesis, and now Systemic Studio and Fund, I think that's helpful because, for me at least, it speaks to the evolution in thinking about how do we do this all better, faster, and your model, your platforms have changed. So if you can just kind of focus on where you're headed, that'd be great, and then turn it over to Sergio.
Thank you, Will. So we hosted the very first of the programs that we ran related to wicked problems and entrepreneurship back in 2015. And I'll say what that is and where we're headed as a result of this. So at the beginning, the fundamental notion was that too few entrepreneurs were pursuing things that mattered to them and that mattered in the world. So we were missing that. We were seeing too many dog walking apps, too many dating apps, and not nearly enough attention being applied by these extraordinarily intelligent and capable people who were going to be fueled by capital. So we were seeing both entrepreneurship and capital hijacked for things that really didn't matter. That irked me, and we created 10-10-10 to begin to address this. 10-10-10, 10 wicked problems in an area like water, 10 entrepreneurs who would, each of them be someone who planned to create a new venture within the next 12 months. And then third, 10 days. We'd give them 10 days to take in and digest the framing of these wicked problems and begin to understand them. And by the way, we didn't care that you didn't have subject matter expertise in a thing. We very specifically wanted entrepreneurs who were capable as entrepreneurs and were willing to listen to subject matter experts that we brought in, others that we brought to the party, if you like. And that cross-sector collaboration and engagement informed what we did. So the idea was, let's learn from those who are out there who know more than we do about what the problems are and how they should be thought about. Let's invite entrepreneurs to that conversation and provide them with the resources they need. And then, if they chose to create a company, let's try to help them find access to capital, the things that they would need to create a successful venture. So that was the start. That was 10-10-10, supported by AxGenesis, the venture studio, which is about creating ventures. But the more recent iteration is the development of a venture studio. A venture studio is not, it's not the same as a typical accelerator. A venture studio actually creates the companies in concert with or in tandem with the entrepreneur, and is a kind of institutional co-founder. So the latest thing, Systemic Studio, is about applying the capacity to create new ventures at some speed with capital that will support those ventures and take them into much more capital later on, but addressing ourselves always to these kinds of wicked problems in climate, water, health, sustainability, those areas. So that's where we've gone, and there's much, much more to come. So.
Thanks, Tom.
Thank you. Bueno, in my case, I head the water and sanitation division at the bank. We help countries increase access and sustainability of water, access to water and sanitation, integrated water resources management, and solid waste management. But in the context of innovation, we created Source of Innovation. We're trying to mainstream innovation in Latin America. We think that through innovation we can do things faster and cheaper, and that's important because we're behind achieving the SDGs. And then in trying to mainstream innovation, we're trying to focus in public utilities, and then we're trying to understand how can we make these innovative solutions sustainable for the long term. Because the problem is not that there is not the innovation. The problem is that some of these innovations could end up being like shining stars, that they work for a minute, they provide light, and then they disappear. So innovations and solutions to the wicked problems need to be sustainable. And in that, we're trying to promote the creation of ecosystems, the creation of entrepreneurship, the creation of research foundations, the working with the stakeholders, the affected populations, and that's why at the beginning I would say innovation needs not to be only digital or technical, but social and environmental and financial, and they all need to come together.
Sergio, thank you. So I'm going to ask you a couple of questions, just give you a preview, and then we'll jump around a little bit, and certainly feel free to ask questions to your co-panelists here. But what do you believe needs to change with respect to increasing the scaling of solutions? So, what are the barriers? What would you like to see? What are the interventions? And then how do you quantify the impact of your programs? I mean, in some ways, some of these things are pretty straightforward, leaders delivered, whatever it may be, but interested in the impact piece of the puzzle. But let's start with that first question. So, Ana Laura, what do you believe needs to change to increase the scaling of solutions and impact? This is if I had a magic wand, I would, whatever. And feel free to ask for more money.
Well, yeah. Actually, I will start from there, from the
Well, that's great. Then you're done.
from the financing. I think when we try to scale, and sometimes we have a solution in a small scale or in a pilot that works, but when you want to scale, you have to risk more. The financing risk is higher. So you have to be willing to lose as well, and you have to be bold, right? And so that would be one thing for me to say, to respect scaling. The other one is to understand that we work in this social community nature projects, and that are like I was saying, in a human-based context or processes, and we want to scale that as well. And it's hard because the contexts are different, the locations are different, the people is just complex. They have different ways of thinking. So, for example, behavioral change is a great component that we are exploring, in trying to adapt that to different contexts, different projects. How do we understand the people that we are serving to? So for me, that's also something that we have to have in mind to scale solutions. And the third one would be mechanisms for knowledge sharing. How do we invest more in that? Because I think we keep repeating the same mistakes. And I believe, like, at the same time, right? Like, we are doing projects and maybe other organization is doing the same projects as I am. But how do I know that, and how do I understand what they made wrong? And I think, just talking about our organization, we need to invest more in that, because we are so on the day by day trying to solve problems, trying to come up with goals, follow the strategy, keep doing more and more innovations, everything. But how do we invest also in capacities to have platforms to share the learnings? So.
Great, thanks. You brought up something interesting about sharing knowledge, and I had a conversation with the CEO from a water utility, and he said utilities don't compete. So we do a pretty good job in sharing knowledge and best practices, and I really thought that was a real eye-opener, because, you know, we think about utilities not being innovative, but I think it's a little bit more complicated. Stefan, you know, WMO, global organization, so.
You know, in general, I believe scaling, of course, we want to increase our impact, but if we scale things for a wicked problem, that can be dangerous as well. Because of wicked problems, by definition, have many actors, many interdependencies, many cause-effect relationships that we don't even understand. And that's the definition Tom just introduced to us. So something which worked at small scale and helped to increase access to clean water, so maybe at a larger scale is counterproductive, or doesn't reach the right communities, or whatever. So therefore, scaling needs to be accompanied by a lot of investments into monitoring and evaluation. You know, so how is scaling working? Are we still achieving the objective that we were good at a small scale? How does it translate to larger scale? And therefore, this monitoring, evaluation, learning is very important part of the scaling. So maybe it's not doing the same, just more. It maybe we have to do different things at different scales, but we need to understand that, because as he defined, wicked problems, there's unpredictable consequences which we don't know. So therefore, the classical linear scaling can be leading the wrong direction. So therefore, MEL, monitoring, evaluation, learning is absolutely critical, I believe. And I'm not saying that we are always the best at doing that, but I wanted to bring that into the discussion. Yeah.
I love the cautionary note that, yeah, you know, let's not fall in love with this, and let's keep in mind that it's not a cookie cutter at all. Every location, stakeholders are different. And Gabriela just moved to the side of the room, which means I've got a warning sign. I'm totally blowing through the schedule here. So Sergio and Tom, if you could just 1 minute each before she drags me off the stage.
Design. So I'm going to say something about that. When Elinor Ostrom delivered her Nobel address here in Stockholm in 2009, she talked about what she observed in the world and laid out 8 principles that were important, critical. If we were going to think about not just markets and government as ways of getting things done, but self-organization that could lead to real value. She talked about this effectively, but what she talked about was designing that thing that would be delivering the solution. And the thing that's interesting about what we're talking about now, and I love that this has come up, is we're having to design not for just a thing at a point in time. It has to have the capacity to adapt to the changes that we're going to see. And that's a new, more complex thing. It's why, in effect, we have to begin to draw on all of the tools and adjacent possibilities that might be out there. It's sort of why I mentioned AI as one of those things that may turn out to be a critically important way we think about seeing patterns and seeing what we might be able to do to address complex problems that we face as humans. These are a big deal, and design is throughout all of this. It's not do it once and you're done. It's you're always designing that future that you want humanity to be able to live into, and having to see whether you achieved this or didn't. So we have to monitor, measure, adapt, change as we do what we do.
Just following on the theme of design, I think that the most important thing that we have to do to be able to scale and provide solution is to redesign the governance that we live. Climate change, through droughts, through floods that are very unconventional, like wildfires or droughts without any precedent, will require a different type of solution that our science, our protocols are not relevant any longer. And in order to do that, we need to involve the stakeholders so that they are better equipped, better prepared, they have better information, so that they can decide by themselves what's the best thing or what's the best solution. So in a way, you want to scale up, but you want to have tailor-made solutions because problems are confined within an area. So throughout the reviewing our governance, we're going to be able to find that local solutions are actually the way to address global challenges like climate change.
Interesting. Okay, great. So I need to move to Q&A. I think we've got 6 minutes, right? Okay, open it up for questions. You know, the more hands, the better. So even if you don't have a question, just raise your hand.
Thank you. Amanda Lufin from Human Right to Water. I'm part of a think tank at the moment that's trying to figure out why there isn't enough investment in water infrastructure in general. It's always the poor relation. The big money is going into other infrastructure and not going into water. And one of the reasons, and there are lots, is to do with the fact that it's small scale. So the big investments are billion-dollar investments in big infrastructure, but actually what we're talking about here is small scale, community-based, community-level, bottom-up type of solutions. How do you scale that? And I just wondered if you have some perspectives on that.
Sergio, I think that has your name on it.
One of the problems that our sector has is that the provision of water and sanitation and the fight against the effects of climate change, droughts and floods are confined within a municipality. And then municipalities are very far away from central governments, the ones that have control of the resources. So that's one problem. The second problem is that there are always political interference that do not enable funds to flow to different localities. The third problem that we have is sometimes there is political alignment and there are resources, but there are no projects. Or sometimes the projects that we find are not the appropriate projects for the solutions that we need to address. So it's a combination of all of those three things that are making that resources to something as essential as water and sanitation is going somewhere else as opposed to water and sanitation.
Sure.
Well, that's a very good question. And we're thinking that ourselves in how to create innovation about financing. I think that's something that we need to start thinking, not only on technology or solutions, but also financial mechanisms. And also ways of thinking about that. I mean, first, we have to think that some of the investment is going to get lost, like I said, is sometimes this nature of the projects are only are designed for example, donation or what we do, like to invest on catalytic in financing, for example. And the other one is just to create or think outside of the box. And one concept that we were discussing is, for example, why don't we think on like infrastructure as a service, right? Like has been on also in some conversations and just different ways of thinking, right? Like just put it on the table. But.
Sure. Here for ideas. Thank you. Gabriela, we have time for one or two? One more. Wow, you're tough.
Thank you very much for all of that. I'm Jessica Orcas. I'm a junior rapporteur for this conference and also working for Ricardo in Australia. I was wondering what is the role of young water professionals in this? Like we talk a lot about innovation and entrepreneurship. What do you think young professionals do need to do from now on to help in this? Because there is not a lot of talk on that today, so I'm wondering what your thoughts are on that. What's our role in this?
It's actually very interesting because in the water sector, and you can probably see it in Seaweed, there are like 40% of the people have a lot of gray hair like me, and then 40% of the people are young people. And it's so there was a gap in which the water sector was not attractive to young professionals that today are like middle-aged professionals. But climate change resonates so much in the young people, and they are really inclined and for the right reasons to come to the sector. One of the things that we do is to promote entrepreneurship, and we've done by now 2 e-hackathons. And Marcello is here, he can correct me. I think that more than 600 people, young professionals, young people, not even professionals, have signed up for it. They were organized like in 72 groups, and they identified a challenge in an informal settlement of climate change or a basin. So the role, they have a role. They are the entrepreneurs, they are the inventors, they're innovators of the future. And they have a very active community going on. And we're here to sort of support them and provide them and make sure that they are empowered and they are incubated, and then they can become the solutions of the next problems to face.
Thank you. I'm officially out of time, which means you're out of time. Right, Gabriela? But I'm going to throw one in because I'm standing up. I hope you are the enemy of the status quo. And I'm being serious in that everything needs to change. Not throw out everything, but it needs to change. So go at it with passion. So, yes. Now what? What do you mean now what? I'm going to introduce my colleague, and a friend who has been a driving force in all of this, Leonela Barreto, who's going to take it from here and make it all real. How's that? Yeah.
Okay, I'm afraid if I stay here in the podium, nobody's going to see me. So, no, you can see me, right? Yeah, okay, then I'll leave this here. All right, thank you very much, Will, Tom, and the panelists. It was really nice to hear you all. My name is Leonela Barreto Dillon. I'm the Regional Director for Latin America and the Caribbean of CEWAS. We're based in Switzerland. And for the past years, we have been collaborating with the Inter-American Development Bank, in particularly with Marcello Bassani, which is there. Raise your hand, say hello. We have been studying what innovation ecosystems in water and sanitation are. And we're very happy that we're finally here sharing with you some of the learnings we have had and the tool we have produced in the framework of this technical cooperation. So we just heard about catalytic communities, right? So we know that catalytic communities are this group of organizations that get together and think differently to bring solutions to these wicked problems. So I want you to think of these catalytic communities for the next 7 minutes as they were a soccer team or a football team, all right? So every one of these players, they have different skills, right? Like Messi, Mbappe, and Neymar back then. And if they coordinate, they are actually able to score a goal. Or even win the World Cup like the ladies in Spain just did, by the way. So for us, this is exactly how these innovation ecosystems work. So we believe that innovation ecosystems are these collaboration systems, right? Which is formed of different actors which have different skills. They exchange, they interact in an environment which is actually fostering the development and also the adoption of these innovations that should contribute to increase the coverage, the efficiency, and the sustainability. So this results in improved water and sanitation service provision for the population. All right, so we believe that according to what we went through, and I was very happy to see also in Will's slides the same actors, we believe that the players are actually the academia, the research and development institutions, development organizations like multilaterals, support organizations such as incubators, accelerators, NGOs as well, investors, government entities, and then we have our front guys, right? We have the startups. Many of them are young. They are fast, right? They are the ones who get the balls and then pass it through to the more experienced ones, companies in the private sectors. And then we have our Messi, the water and sanitation service providers. They are the best ones positioned to score a goal, in fact. So if they coordinate, then they can score a goal, which means bring an innovation to the water sector. So obviously, these guys, they just don't play in a vacuum. They play in a field. And this field has different components, which we call pillars, component, attributes, which are 8, okay? And then as I show them, you will see that you will relate so much. What is actually needed for these players to play? They need talent, culture, leadership, policies and policy instruments, financing, support, collaboration, and network, regulatory frameworks that don't inhibit innovation, and obviously demand. There's no point of bringing new products and services if there's nobody wanting to actually use them. So all of these interactions actually contribute to building up those components, and then those components enable the interaction of the actors. But this doesn't happen like organically. Oh, this we're just going to organize and score a goal. No. There is the need for a coach. There has to be a coach, right? Which is that tell us what's the play we're going to play. And usually in our countries, because of the intrinsic characteristics, it is the state, the one that tell us this should be the aim of the innovation. You know, these are our gaps, our issues, our wicked problems, and let's just put all of efforts to solve that. So what we also found in our study with Marcello is that innovation ecosystems, they just don't happen from one day to the other, okay? So it starts in the inception phase with a few entrepreneurs, many of them youngs too, that start like creating new things, but they are pretty much alone. Then there is a second stage, which is the birth. All right, and then a little more, so actors start innovating. What we are looking for is the growth stage, in which many actors are interacting and collaborating, and then it comes the declining, which is the maturity stage. And what we saw was the following. Remember these 8 elements that we talked about? Talent, demand, financing, etc. So each of them, they show characteristics which are very specific of the stage of maturity. So for instance, leadership. At the beginning, there is no leader. There's no one there. But then, in the birth stage, there is a leader who is not the state, by the way. It's somebody else, which is actually convening everybody. But then in the growth stage is when actually the state takes full leadership, puts money on it, puts policy, and then decides to develop it. And then comes the maturity stage, which is when it declines and other sectors become more interesting. So what we did, Marcello and I, what we did was we took these characteristics and put it in a scorecard system, all right? And then thanks to that, we were able to create or come up with this tool that allows you to diagnose and also strengthen the water and sanitation innovation ecosystem. So the way how the tool works is quite simple. First, you have to collect evidences, because if you ask somebody, they'll tell you everything is bad. But then if you actually look into it, you will find that there are things happening. So you collect evidence, then you see, okay, each of these components, in which stage it is. Then, based on that, you construct your map, which is actually your soccer field, and then you prioritize, and then you decide for a strategy based on these 37 strengthening measures that we have put together. So this tool that we're presenting here will be soon in the Source of Innovation webpage, so you can just access it and then apply this tool to diagnose the ecosystem. And if you have more questions, would like to learn more, I invite you to talk to Marcello Bassani, which is right there, from the Water and Sanitation Division, and also contact Source of Innovation, so we can get together and convert this water and sanitation sector into this vibrant innovation ecosystem. So thank you very much. Thank you very much. So I'm going to call right now to the stage my friend Jose Antonio Torre, who is online. I don't know if he's listening to us right now. Yes, yes. Great.
Yes. Hello.
Jose Antonio.
Leonela, how are you?
So this is Jose Antonio Torre, and he is the director of the Center for Future of Cities at Tecnológico de Monterrey from Nuevo León, Mexico. So he is going to introduce to us an initiative which is called Innovation Initiative, and they actually applied the tool very lightly, and then he is going to tell us how that went. So the floor is yours, Jose Antonio.
Thank you, Leonela, and I'm very happy to be here and it's digital presentation. You're going to present my slides, right?
Yes.
Or somebody, but I can do it if that's okay. All right, good. So I'm going to talk a little bit about Mexico and the state of Nuevo León. So thank you very much. So Leonela already presented me, but as many of you know, the last the last couple of years in Mexico, we've been having a very tough water crisis. In 2022, 81% of the Mexican territory had a different level of drought. So the federal government declared a matter of national security. As you can see in this graph, the northern part of Mexico and the central part of Mexico have been hit the most. Next slide, please. As you can see in the red circle, that's the state of Nuevo León. We're going to talk about the state of Nuevo León and the metropolitan area of Monterrey, which is the capital of the state of Nuevo León, in the next slides. Next, please. So Monterrey, the metropolitan area of Monterrey has been growing very rapidly for the last 3 decades. Now, Monterrey is the second largest metropolitan area in Mexico with 5.2 million inhabitants, and 92% of the population in Nuevo León in Nuevo León concentrates in the metropolitan area of Monterrey. As you can see in this slide, on the bottom right-hand graph, you can see that the last 6 years, precipitation has been below the historic average. So we have more population, more activity, less precipitation, a wicked problem like we heard in the last panel. Next slide, please. So in 2022, the state and the city and the metropolitan area of Monterrey suffer its worst drought in over 50 years. And the situation is still going on this 2023. So obviously the climate crisis has to do with it, but mainly I would say most importantly, the lack of climate resiliency culture and the lack of governance, like we heard in the last paragraph. If this is a federal government issue, is this is a state government issue? Are there municipalities? Is it the utilities? So lack of investment in infrastructure, uneven distribution, overexploitation, polluted urban water. We knew we have a lot of research and documents published by universities alongside my university, TED de Monterrey, say we were facing a huge problem in the future, and we did. We are facing it right now, and we did have the possibilities to prevent the situation, but we didn't act accordingly. There was no governance dynamics. There was not a community that really pushed this forward. Next slide, please. And as you can imagine, the situation affected the most vulnerable communities most, creating a very complex and dangerous social unrest. Since this crisis, the government, the federal government, the state government, the utility have been working very, very hard, making very important investments in infrastructures, in capacity building, in culture around water. So there's a lot of movement, a lot of activity going on. And I would say a water resiliency culture is emerging through this crisis and through the activities we're needing to speed up and act very fast. Next slide, please. So next slide, please. So what is the role of university? And Leonela told us universities play a role in this. I would say beyond education and research, that's something I do want to focus. The University Tec de Monterrey has been doing research for decades before on water and water usage. We, as I mentioned before, we have published many documents, research about the challenges of water availability in Nuevo León and in general in Mexico. But we have some strengths as to beyond education and research, how can we harness the capabilities of the university? We have our main campus in Monterrey. We have 26 campuses around Mexico. We have a water center for Latin America and the Caribbean, one the Center for the Future of Cities. So we want to put those capacities in order to push forward innovation. We think one of the roles of the university, at least of Tecnológico de Monterrey, is to drive innovation. And we began working in that side of the puzzle, of the wicked problem, before the crisis began. Next slide, please. So since 2020, working alongside the IDB on the Source of Innovation Initiative with the Fundación FEMSA and with the Tec de Monterrey, we decided to take the coach role, right, on this tournament and say, well, we're going to deliver a push for an innovation ecosystem where we will focus on getting applied research focus on identifying solutions and innovate in investment and financing tools, and create the supports and the coordination, the collaboration to drive an innovation ecosystem. So that was before the crisis hit us very, very hard. Next one, please. So this tool that Leonela just presented us came in a fantastic timing, and we this year we did a quick evaluation for the innovation ecosystem of Nuevo León, and these are the results of that quick evaluation. So some of the areas on birth stage, some of the areas of an inception stage, but the tool really helped us focus on the next activities we'll need to support in order to drive an innovation ecosystem to a more of a mature state. Next slide, please. So through this, we decided to focus on 4 of the pillars that Leonela, of the 8 pillars. So talent and culture, support and collaboration networks, and financing. There's other weak areas of the ecosystem, but we don't have the capacity right now or the reach. So we are focusing on this specific play, as Leonela is saying, talent and culture, collaboration networks, and financing. Next slide, please. So I'm gonna share 3 or 4 activities, efforts we're doing. There's many more, but just to show you how this play is being played, right? This game is being played at the Monterrey and Nuevo León level. So we designed an event we called the Next Decade Water Disruption. We presented this as 2023, where community, university, startups, governments, researchers, entrepreneurs get together and exchange experience, knowledge, solutions in a very active and a very dynamic environment. As you can see in this graph, a lot of participation, very dynamic, and I would say it began to push the agenda forward for water innovation. We will have this type of event once a year for the next several years. Next slide, please. But also the university driving specific action at the local level. So an Arroyo Vivo initiative that 30 stakeholders are participating alongside with the university to create a project to remediate a water ecosystem within the metropolitan area of Monterrey. But more than that, create a model of active participation of stakeholders in the remediation of our ecosystems. And a lot of people have been participating, a lot of excitement, a lot of visibility. We're aiming for that, of this type of efforts, creating the need to act. It's difficult, but it can be done, and it needs to be done faster. So an activity that bring action to the territory. Next slide, please. And applied research on our city rivers, our urban rivers. So drone scanning and data gathering on it, and analysis and modeling of our main river in the metropolitan area of Monterrey, the Santa Catarina River, getting researchers, NGOs, universities, the government aligned into a shared problem, but doing applied research for that. Next slide, please. And something that in the last couple of weeks came out, we were approached as a university by the water utility, Servicios de Agua y Drenaje de Monterrey, asking us to help them establish an innovation culture and practice within the utility. So this is a picture of a session this week at the university with a leadership team of the utility to begin working with them for establishing an innovation culture within the utility. So we're very happy that actions that seem isolated are really becoming this big play, like Leonela tells us, and beginning to act on building the strengths of the innovation ecosystem. Next slide, please. And we aim that in the next 3 years, by pushing this agenda and other things we're doing as a university and obviously in the city, we will have a greener field, right? Something that moves from inception to birth and from birth to growth. And even though we didn't work in all of the weak spots, by doing this effort, some of the weak are going to become birth. And so we are aiming for creating this greener field in the next couple of years. Next slide, please. But our aim is really to, as the IDB and the Fundación FEMSA, Tec de Monterrey, within this big effort, a source of innovation, to really create a model of an innovation ecosystem for Nuevo León, but that creates an example for other regions in Mexico and Latin America that it can be done. We need to act. The university needs to take, in the case of Nuevo León, a leadership role, as a coaching role, to push the agenda forward. Next slide, please. So thank you very much. That's my email, and thank you very much for the opportunity, Leonela.
Thank you very much. So, Antonio, we're running out of time, in fact. So we're going to hold your question to the public for a little while, and then we're going to go to our next presentation, which is, in this case, our colleagues from the World Meteorological Organization. So I call to the front my friend, Sofia Stanstrom. There, I did it. And then Johanna Korhonen. There you go. All right. Thank you very much. And then welcome to the stage.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sofia Sandström. I work at the World Meteorological Organization, WMO, based in Geneva. I'm the coordinator of a project called the Hydro Hub. It's a project that looks at hydrological monitoring through an innovation lens with the support of SDC and IDB.
And my name is Johanna Korhonen. I work also at WMO as a scientific officer, and I'm dealing with the hydrological monitoring aspects.
So in the next 10 minutes or so, Joanna and I will present a case study that builds on some of the findings of the Hydro Hub innovation calls. But before we do that, we'll just put forward a few statistics to help to set the stage. So a recent study that was conducted in developing countries and that looked at the capabilities of hydrological monitoring reported, 66% of the countries reported a declining state of their hydrological monitoring networks. So that's 2/3 of those countries. At the same time, 3 billion people across the world do not have access to information on the quality of their water due to lack of monitoring. So this represents a major challenge for the national meteorological and hydrological services in the world that are responsible for the installation, but also for the maintenance of hydrological monitoring stations. As we saw, they need to be improved and modernized. So there's an increasing, and as Amanda mentioned, there's a decreasing budget allocated to exactly that. So there's an increasing demand for cost-effective solutions. And this is where innovation could play an important role. In the context of hydrometry, there are innovations out there, but the real problem is that their uptake by the NMHSs, the national services, remains rather low for various reasons. It could be their cost. It could be the fact that they're not manufactured at the local level. So there are various reasons for this. And this is where the Hydro Hub, through the innovation calls, offers a solution. So innovation calls are basically a mechanism that addresses the needs and the challenges of the NMHSs through the uptake of innovative technologies. A few words about the process of those open calls for innovation. So we're looking at technologies that are low cost and open source. Another aspect is that the solutions need to be applicable in other environments as well. One key component here is the partnerships that are formed through these projects that include the entrepreneurs, like the innovators, the entrepreneurs, the startups, together with the NMHSs and others, often academia and research. And this is the catalytic community that helps to enable innovation in the context that we are talking about. And of course, sustainability, as Sergio mentioned in his opening, is a key aspect of these projects. Joanna?
So we just learned about this IDB methodology on innovation ecosystems, and we learned about the innovation calls. Since we just recently applied this tool, we did it a little bit different than other example. So we actually implemented this as a before innovation calls were existed, and then how situation is now after innovation calls. So WMO innovation calls were started 5 years ago, and based on our rapid diagnosis, this was the football field before innovation calls. And we also identified that we could have impacted certain areas or components, and those are talent, support collaboration, networking, demand, and also financing. And next slide will show our rapid analysis, how are the results after implementing these innovation calls. So we now see it's more greener. Some of the components are already in a growth level, while before they were in a birth and inception level, similar than Jose presented in his presentation. Next slide, I will tell some examples of innovation calls and how they impacted the innovation ecosystem. So these Hydro Hub innovation calls have been implemented in 5 countries. In this presentation, we will focus 3 countries that were part of the second innovation call in 2020. So first example is from Belize, and this project was implemented in Belize, where a company called Eligens from Brazil built a new model of climate data management system that was performing automatic quality control based on artificial intelligence, and that enabled to NMH to better have their data. Sophia, could you please tell something about this project?
Yeah, so very quickly, we had conversations with the 3 project leads of the projects here, and what came out in the case of Belize was really talent. The pool of talent that was available for the project was really the enabler for innovation. Their high motivation, the understanding that quality control of their data was indispensable to address some of the major environmental issues of Belize, despite the lack of financing and resources, was very important here.
Okay, let's have a second example. So this project was implemented in a Indian Himalayan region by Indian Institute of Technology, Roorkee. And in this project, they developed a low-cost LiDAR-based sensor to measure water level in challenging conditions. What was the impact of this project?
Yeah, very quickly, we're running out of time, but in the case of the project in India, the component that came out was demand. Demand because the NMHS in India was introduced to open hardware, but also to the potential of local manufacturing. So that created a demand for collaboration between these 2 sectors. Demand also from other countries, as this project was piloted in Peru as well.
Oh, that's wonderful, since scalability is the key issue. So let's go our third example in Tanzania, where Tahmo developed an open source camera solution to establish and maintain river rating curves. How about this project?
For this one, it was support, collaboration, and networking that came out. This component allowed the technology to be continuously improved and to really meet the needs and the requirements of the NMHS. So and also all the material of the technology was made available online to really ensure the sustainability of the project after its end.
Oh, that's great with the collaboration is increasing. So these were the examples, and what's next in the future? We will have more innovation calls, and based this rapid diagnosis, we identified that we could work on financing aspects and sustainability, and since WMO is a standard setting organization for hydrometry, we can also work on regulatory materials. Thank you very much for your time and interest.
Thank you.
Thank you. That was very informative. I was wondering if, as part of the innovation calls, you have another stage in which the low-cost ladder could be applied. Well, that one is applied in Peru, but like, do you have another stage where you can share that with even more countries that have the same problem? Because given that you are globally, you have that capability as well of like getting a solution from one place and implement it somewhere else.
Can I take it? Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you very much for your question. The fact that the technologies and that the solution could be applied in other environment is one of the criteria almost that we're looking at the stage where innovators are invited to apply. So the short answer to your question is yes. This is really in the spirit of what we're doing.
Hi, it's Amanda again. So what you're describing in a lot of these innovations is a citizen science approach almost. I'm just wondering how you're making those technologies more available for citizens to monitor data so that you can really scale it up. I'm just wondering how that's included in the projects, or if you've even dealt with that yet.
Thank you for your question, Amanda. So citizen science is one aspect that we have not yet had the experience in the context of these innovation calls, but it's absolutely included in the type of work that we want to move forward with the calls, definitely.
So thank you very much. And I believe you guys also have a question for our public. Means you have the time now to pick their brains for future activities that you will be doing in this area. So what is the question you have for the public?
Exactly. So we're going back to sustainability. I mean, that was one of the key aspects that we're looking at. And we wanted to hear from you and your experience in implementing innovative projects. What would be your advice to ensure the sustainability of such projects?
Not working? Yes. I think the main thing is to address to the cultural problem. Mm-hmm. So the only thing that will be, will be last in the future. So innovation is to change culture, basically. Okay.
Thank you.
We have a second.
Yeah, I think that it needs to be relevant to the stakeholder that is being affected by it.
Great. So culture relevance, very important. Great. Let's
I would say a couple of things. The first is the design of the innovation itself, to incorporate not just the starting point, the build, but also the operate aspect. And the second I have to say is something I've learned in experience, which is you have to inspect what you expect. And you know to keep on monitoring on an ongoing basis to ensure the same focus on an ongoing basis.
We have also Will here with the microphone.
Sure. I believe it's about the team. So whether it's an entrepreneur with a startup, it's the quality of the team, the ability to pivot, the ability to get outside input. Same with projects. You know, the project team has to be, they have to understand what the challenges are and adapt quickly.
We have actually time for one more or two more. Let's say Natalia.
Okay. I would like to add not only the team for the startup, if you are working with a startup, but some cases you are working in innovation projects, you need a shared leadership. If you just have one champion pushing for that project, the sustainability of the project is going to be something happen to that champion.
So, thank you. If I would have to say one thing, it would be the main thing is purpose. So if the team who's leading this and the community have this purpose, and not only by the head and the science, but also by the heart, they want to solve these great challenges, then obviously they would have to solve economic challenges, many other challenges, public challenges, but purpose, I think, is the main thing.
All right, great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Let's give them So we're coming to the end of this session, and we all hope that it was not only informative but also inspiring to hear about how we can make a change, right? Wicked problems out there, but we are there to make the changes. We hope you like this tool that we have been working for these past years on innovation ecosystems and how to diagnose them and what to do about them. So in the name of everybody who worked on this session for the past months, thank you very much for joining us, for being here. Do I need a microphone? All right. I do. Ah, right. There is the online people. Right. Correct. So sorry about that. So thank you very much for being here, and please make sure that you go to this scan this QR code. Remember? Okay, here. Yeah, there is. All right. So please, if you can help us, scan this QR code and then tell us if you like the session. We will be around with this Focus on the Americas sessions until the end of the conference. So have a great evening, and thank you very much for being here with us. Thank you.
Welcome everyone to our last session for the Focus on the Americas 2023. My name is Gabriela Nunez from the Inter-American Development Bank. I want to thank you for joining us today. Today's program includes speakers in both English and Spanish, so kindly select the language that works best for you. First, I would like to invite Franz Rojas, Head of Water and Sanitation for CAF, to give us some opening remarks and tell us about the current context in Latin America and the Caribbean.
Thank you very much for the invitation and for this session that was co-sponsored with IDB. So I welcome my colleague, Sergio Campos, and the other colleagues from the other institutions. Because there's a translation, I'm going to speak in English. Hopefully, if you want or you prefer to listen to in Spanish, so you can use the headphones to switch. I celebrate this event because we've been working and we've been discussing a lot about financing and ways of innovating financing. And it's not trivial, I would say, that when we say that water is at the core of sustainable development. And not only at the core of sustainable development because it's interlinkages with nutrition, with food, productive development, renewable energy, and others. But we have listened before this session in a session of COP28 that water should be at the center of the political agenda. And that's because water is important for most of, perhaps everything we do in the world. So, saying that, we still have challenges in the region of Latin America, which is the main focus of this session, because following the latest report of the Joint Monitoring Program that was launched last month, we see that in Latin America we still have 163 million people with drinking water unsafely managed. And the amount is almost the double, 330 million with sanitation unsafely managed, and the wastewater that it's untreated is around 60%, perhaps 55%. So the challenges remain very huge. And in addition, our region is highly vulnerable to water-related risks. And we know that climate change exacerbates droughts, which are more profound, and the frequency of floods increased more than 85% in the last 20 years. And we know, for instance, that El Niño, the ENSO, the El Niño Southern Oscillation is coming by the end of this year, and it's categorized as strong. So unfortunately, will have to deal with severe damages in the next months and the year to come. At CAF, we have concluded a study in 13 countries and extrapolated to the rest of the countries, and we have found an amount of investment that is required to achieve SDG 6, based in difference with other institutions that have been doing with econometric analysis and others, taking into account the national action plans of the different countries. And we found that we need $365 billion to 2030. So it's about 40 million per year. So when we compare that with the historic amount or the current investment in Latin America, that it's around 7 to 8 billion, so we can conclude easily that we need to triple or perhaps to quadruple the historic annual investment. So then the question is if that's possible. And let me share just 3 concepts on that. Yeah, is that possible? First, we know that we have to be more efficient with current investment. So it's related with demand project approaches that I understand some of the case studies we're going to share is going to talk about to let us postpone new water intakes or water dams or water transfers. The second one is to increase financing to bridge the gap. Not to fill the gap, but to bridge the gap. But it has to deal with enabling environment, also with capacity, and we also need to accelerate the pace. So, for instance, there are some innovative, or not innovative, but new trends of how to accelerate the pace. For instance, at CAF, we have delivered a project preparation program in order to accelerate and to have final designs in order to investments. But we need more. But we need more not only to be efficient and to increase the investments, and we need additional financing, and that's why we need not only coming from the IFIs, but perhaps with other institutions like public development banks, and also try to attract the private investment either as PPPs or blended finance coming from commercial banks or public development banks. And at the end, we also need, the third one would be to optimize solutions for current or increased investments, and it has to deal with nature-based solutions that could be cheaper or could be complementary to gray infrastructure, and also to promote circular economy, for instance, to promote water reuse instead of building new dams or new water transfers in order to have water security for this region. So these are the 3 messages: to be more efficient, to increase financing with different innovative and attracting new actors to the field, and also to optimize solutions. And at the end, I would say that innovation is not a matter of technology only. It has to deal with institutions, with financing, with governance, and many aspects of innovation. So I welcome you to be here and wish you a great session. Thank you.
I would like to now give word to our keynote speaker, Dr. Gassner Oliveira. He is partner at Geo Associados Business Consultants, professor at the Department of Fundação Getúlio Vargas, and coordinator of the Center for Infrastructure Studies and Environmental Solutions.
Thank you very much. It's a great honor to be here and participate in this session. I will talk about 3 points which relate to the very insightful words that we had from Mr. Rojas. The increasing importance of public-private partnerships, the importance of the design of contracts, in particular performance contracts in water and sanitation, and the importance of water and sanitation for mitigation and adaptation to extreme weather, especially for vulnerable communities. So those are the 3 points. For the public-private partnerships, before talking about that, I will mention the enormous gap of water and sanitation in Brazil. Not everyone has access to treated water. Almost half of the population does not have access to sewage collection, and almost half of the wastewater generated is not treated. So this gives you, and we have 40% of water losses in distribution. Those numbers should be enough to show the importance of increasing investment. And the gap, talking about the investment gap, is enormous in Brazil. According to official data, we would need to have an annual amount of approximately 45 billion reais of investment, and we have less than half of that amount. So we have to double it, showing the importance of bringing more capital and more sources of capital in nature in different types of financing. PPP projects, if we see the history of PPP in Brazil since 2004, water and sanitation is the sector that has more PPPs than the other sectors of different natures. I will not go into detail, but I will underline the importance of performance contracts in water and sanitation projects. Let me talk about a particular project, the Novo Rio Pinheiros, a program in São Paulo, in the state of São Paulo, in the city of São Paulo. Pinheiros River is a major reference in Brazil. You can see this in the last century, how the river was a major reference for the population. It got, in many decades of pollution, it got very polluted, and now it's beginning to show very good signs of better quality of water. One of the reasons, one of the contributions was performance contracts. Sabesp, the water company of the state of São Paulo, has experience in performance contracts in different regions of the city. And in particular, in this program, it showed to be quite efficient to, instead of emphasizing the amount of work done, emphasizing the result obtained. For instance, the BOD, result biochemical oxygen demand of water being less than 30 milligrams per liter. Lastly, our last point has to do with mitigation and adaptation to problems which are very frequent and are becoming even more frequent, extreme weather. The IPCC forecast for the impact of even moderate changes in temperature is that there will be a greater frequency of droughts in large parts of the continent, and including large parts of Brazil, and affecting the agribusiness. So crop insurance has become more important. We are developing a research project at Fundação Getúlio Vargas, trying to have a structure of climate resilient development bond coupled with some rigorous criteria for defining the region and adaptation and mitigation mechanism. Dr. Francisca Arnold is one of the researchers. She's at the University of Queen Mary and has developed a structure of CRD bonds. Professor Thelma Krug, who worked for several years at IPCC, is responsible for developing the criteria for choosing the region we are going to study, and obviously we have to have some governance of this region in order to have the insurance for the region, to protect the region. And Professor Ana Silvia Santos, who is from University of Rio de Janeiro and doing her work in Portugal, is through the Institute for Water for Reuse, has developed a program to find the vocation of particular basins in terms of recycled water, and in particular protecting the agribusiness. So what we intend to do in the next few months is to choose the region. We have already some candidates for that, formulate the project of recycled water and prepare the conditions for a pilot project, for using this type of structure, using an SPV that would be a vehicle for an insurance-linked security. In that would, if we have the right project in terms of loss prevention with recycled water, we hope to reduce risk and therefore for the same return obtain more capital and more funds to the project. At the same time, if we have a rigorous way using IPCC data and other databases, we would be able to find a municipality or a community that could be protected from extreme weather conditions. So basically, the message, the final message is that PPP has been important in Brazil. The design of contracts is crucial, and performance contracts have been quite efficient. And we can conceive for different areas mitigation and adaptation mechanisms through some water and sanitation solutions, in particular through recycled water. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Gesner. We look forward to hearing more about your experience during the second half of this session. Our program today is divided into two sections. A series of case studies reflecting innovative financing experiences throughout the region, followed by a high-level panel discussion with our selected experts to tell us more about what it means to do innovation in financing. For our first case study, I would like to welcome our first speaker, Carla Bertocco, partner at Mauá Capital, who is joining us online from Brazil.
Okay, so thank you for the invitation. It's a great honor to be here, even virtually, with you guys today. And I'm glad that I can take advantage of some of the slides that were presented by Mr. Gesner to us today to start talking about the financial structure we prepared and we created here at Mauá Capital. I will just ask the technical guys to help me with the presentation, and we should start talking about the main goals that we have today in Brazil, taking into account the new regulatory framework, as Mr. Gesner has already highlighted. So what you can see from this slide is that we still have more than 90 million people without sewage collection in Brazil today, and even 34 million people without potable water in a daily basis. And the problem is that this difference is even more accurate. You can see it's stronger in both North and Northeast regions in Brazil that usually receive less investment here in Brazil. And we also have a huge target for reducing water losses from 40% to something around 25%. We can go to the next slide. And here is the main goal, the main point that brought us to this sector to work with the water and sanitation. So in general, our supply chain, and this is the main message today, we have, in order to be able to increase the investments, as Mr. Rojas has just said in the beginning, we need to bring all the ecosystem together. It's not something that is feasible being done just for the public-owned companies like we have here in Brazil and that are in charge of more than 80% of the services provided. And for the private concessionaries, we need all the supply chain, the EPC companies, the companies that produce equipment, materials to come together. And what you can see from this slide is that in general, those companies, they were used to have an average of investment, at least here in Brazil, around 15 billion reais, something around $3 billion each year when you take from 2006 up so far. And that it has been increasing a little bit when we started to have a major private participation from the auctions that we had in 2021. But the problem is that if we take into account the big numbers that come from the studies, we have to go from 15 billion reais to something around 60. And if we take into account the even more updated numbers, because we didn't invest in 2021 and 22 what we were supposed to invest, it would go higher up to something around 80 billion reais. This is huge, a huge gap, and not only for the concessionaries to raise capital to be able to execute this capex, but also for the supply chain. And what we found out is that the supply chain of infrastructure sectors and water and sanitation sector as well, is that they are mainly composed by small and medium-sized enterprises, companies that lack capital and even governance. And this is exactly the gap that we want to fill. We can go to the next slide. So the idea that we came up with is that we should treat these companies that in general, they are providing services with as the performance-based agreements, as Mr. Gessner has just presented. We started with these performance-based agreements in Brazil and in São Paulo in 2010, and they have performed really, really well. But the problem is that when the concessionary hire those companies, they pay in installments up to 5 years, and they wait for those companies, the EPC companies, to do all the construction work, to reach the goals, and then they pay a bigger amount. So all those companies, they need the money upfront in order to invest, to reach the performance, and then they are able to receive in installments all the values coming from the concessionaire. So we saw these receivables as a great collateral to provide money for these companies. We run an extensive background check, including the technical capacity of this company. And then together, we analyze this as small PPPs, public-private partnerships, that last for something around 5 years. They need the money upfront that we provide, and we have this collateral that are the receivables of the big concessionaires as Sabesp, that is the company from São Paulo, Copasa from Minas, and some private companies as Aegea. So the point is that these are very, very well prepared contracts, and once that they have the performance meets, those small and medium-sized companies, they can move to other contracts and to work with other areas here in Brazil. So the idea is that we provide a mix of capital, but also governance in order to prepare these small and medium-sized companies to grow together with these moments that we have in Brazil. So we provide the fund, and we find that this is a favorable risk-return equation because they lack capital, and we can provide it together with some governance inputs. We can move to the next slide. Just for you guys to understand the way that those performance contracts are prepared, they have this first phase of execution that runs from 12 to 25 months. And in general, the small companies, they don't receive a big payment during this phase. And then after they conclude, they start to measure the performance. For example, fighting water loss, you are supposed to reduce in 25%. So during this time, they will check if you have reduced the water losses in this amount, and then they receive all the payments. We have another contract, we can move for the next slide, that is very common today that we call the contract as a service. It's something like we use Uber, but we don't buy the car. So it's the same that we have with the companies. So they want to contract the services, but the company that will provide these services needed to buy the equipment, to put everything in place to start providing these services. And again, they will receive the payment in installments. So what we found was that those guys, especially the EPC companies and small companies that provide materials and equipments, they lack money and support. And then together with our sponsors, we provide credit, but we also provide governance. We can move to the next slide. So we have created this receivable fund. We have this junior investment coming from family offices here in Brazil that want to invest in the water sector. And then we have the support of IDB together with the senior investment. And we are talking to other multilateral entities that work in Latin America in order to reach 500 million reais for this fund, the first fund, that is the first one of its kind, in order to provide both credit for small companies in order to make them grow together with this moment that we are experiencing in Brazil and growing together, and also taking advantage and being able to provide services in other parts of the country, because today stay in the south and southeast part of the country, we think that it would be very, very important that they expand their activities, but they will also, only do that if they have money and also have governance. So this is something that we believe it's a new way to work with the supply chain, and this is something that is very important, and align the incentives both of the concessionary, the public policy, and the contracted, the EPC or the industry that was hired. I believe those are the main points that I wanted to show you guys today. I believe it's the next slide, the last slide. Thank you.
Thank you, Carla. Next, we have Mario Velasquez, Country Director for Water for People in Guatemala. He's also joining us virtually. Kindly note his presentation will be done in Spanish.
Gracias. Buenas tardes, buenos días. Un gusto poder compartir con ustedes hoy día la presentación que tengo acá. Si me ayudan proyectando, por favor. Muy bien. Guatemala es un país con el 33% de cobertura forestal. Para ayudar a proteger y mantener los bosques, se han creado dos programas de incentivos forestales. Uno que es un programa de incentivos forestales para pequeños poseedores creado en el 2010 y el programa ProBosque creado en el 2015. Todos estos programas tienen como fin último mantener la cobertura forestal, pero también promover que se puedan establecer nuevos bosques a través de plantaciones forestales. Hemos trabajado en los últimos años para tratar de demostrar que una de las prioridades de conservación de los bosques debe ser aquellas áreas que son de alta y muy alta recarga hídrica, es decir, aquellos territorios que hoy día están proviendo de agua a comunidades y ciudades en Guatemala. Entonces, a partir de este trabajo que venimos haciendo, hemos logrado identificar 4 grandes actividades para priorización de la inversión en estos incentivos forestales. Por un lado, como ya les dije, la reforestación es uno de ellos. Por otro, es que sean mujeres las propietarias o las dueñas o las poseedoras de los bosques, que sean propiedades colectivas, que sean de una comunidad y también que sean propiedades individuales. Dentro de estas 4, como ustedes ven, no figura que sean zonas proveedoras de agua. Entonces, a partir de un trabajo que venimos haciendo y venimos demostrando en Water for People, en 4 municipios rurales de Quiché, hemos mostrado que hay zonas de alta recarga hídrica que proveen de agua a comunidades y a ciudades, y que esta característica de proveer agua debiera de ser una de las checklists para priorizar la inversión de estos incentivos forestales. Lo hemos hecho, hemos venido trabajando con los colegas del Instituto Nacional de Bosques, pero nos hemos encontrado con 2 limitantes que tienen estos programas. Por un lado, la demanda que hay de los programas de incentivos forestales, sea para reforestaciones o para proteger bosques, es mucho más alta que la oferta que puede haber o la disponibilidad de fondos que puede haber desde el Estado para poder incentivarlos. Y luego, que hay pocos recursos o conocimientos de parte de las poblaciones para poder acceder a estos programas de incentivos forestales. Otro que hemos encontrado es que si bien el programa ProBosque tiene dentro de su priorización algo relacionado con tema de agua para ciudades, el programa de incentivos forestales que está destinado directamente para poseedores no lo tiene. Y las poblaciones rurales normalmente son poseedores, no tienen un título de propiedad sobre los terrenos que ellos tienen. Pues esa es una limitante también que afecta bastante para que las personas puedan ingresar a estos programas de incentivos. Finalmente, también hemos encontrado que ellos pueden tener una buena disponibilidad de poder ingresar, pero la limitante de área empieza a ser también importante para ellos. No pueden ingresar más de 15 hectáreas, aproximadamente 37, 38 acres, no pueden, si tienen una área mayor a esa, no pueden ingresar al programa de incentivos forestales, y eso es una limitante. Si me dan el siguiente, por favor. Después de este trabajo que hemos hecho, como les comentaba, en 4 municipios de Quiché, hemos logrado identificar, hemos hecho un estudio para 2.600, más de 2.500 hectáreas en estos territorios. Y eso ha logrado movilizar para esos territorios rurales comunitarios alrededor de 6,5 millones de dólares que han logrado llegar a los bolsillos de las personas que hoy día tienen un bosque que dentro de él hay una fuente de agua, por ejemplo. ¿Ya? Entonces, hemos mostrado también que estos territorios están perdiendo bosque y que si no canalizamos los incentivos forestales hacia estos territorios, los bosques que hoy día existen en unos años más ya no van a estar, y entonces con eso puede reducirse la disponibilidad de agua para las familias. Hemos mostrado que las familias pueden obtener esos ingresos económicos, y al momento de tener ingresos económicos, poblaciones rurales que viven por debajo de la pobreza o tienen una pobreza muy alta, eso les ayuda a ellos a mantener o a proteger su bosque. Y lo más importante, hemos logrado la protección de fuentes de agua bastante importantes en estos territorios. Finalmente, entonces, con esto lo que quiero decir es que nosotros debiésemos de estar buscando alguna alternativa para decir que las poblaciones necesitan asegurar un mecanismo de sostenibilidad de sus fuentes de agua. ¿Cómo podemos hacer ese mecanismo de sostenibilidad? Vinculando a los gobiernos municipales. Los gobiernos municipales normalmente tienen una oficina dedicada a ver los recursos forestales, y estas, en coordinación con una oficina de agua y saneamiento, pueden perfectamente coordinar esfuerzos para asegurar que estas poblaciones tengan acceso a estos fondos. Por otro lado, el Instituto de Bosques debe de explorar también la necesidad de hacer algún ajuste en el programa de incentivos forestales de pequeños poseedores para que las zonas de alta y muy alta recarga hídrica sean objeto de poder ingresar a incentivos forestales. ¿Por qué? Porque, como ya les decía, mayormente en las áreas rurales son poseedores las personas y no tienen un título de propiedad, y al no tener un título de propiedad les limita poder entrar al programa ProBosque. ¿Sí me dan el otro? Con todo esto, los recursos son limitados. Ya veíamos al inicio que una de las principales limitantes que tienen los programas es que hay mucha más demanda de parte de la población, y quizá para otros fines como reforestación o como proteger bosques que no necesariamente están proveyendo agua ahora a las comunidades. Entonces debemos de optimizar los recursos limitados que hoy día tenemos. ¿Por qué? Porque necesitamos mejorar el impacto que vamos a llevar hacia la población. Y así, de esa manera, conservamos bosque, mantenemos biodiversidad, evitamos erosión, pero a la vez aseguramos agua, que al final del día es un vital líquido que las personas necesitan en sus territorios. Es una forma que tiene el Estado de Guatemala para poder coadyuvar a los esfuerzos de proveer agua a la población.
Next, we have Alejandro Calvache, Water Fund Senior Expert for Latin America region at the Nature Conservancy. His presentation will also be done in Spanish.
Buenas tardes. Trabajo en The Nature Conservancy hace 15 años y mi trabajo ha consistido en desarrollar plataformas o mecanismos de acción colectiva para la protección de cuencas. Creo que esta discusión quedó zanjada hace muchos años, y esa discusión básicamente es si la infraestructura gris o la infraestructura verde, cuál es mejor, cuál es más costosa, cuál va primero. Creo que esto ya no se discute. Creo que la conclusión de esto es, lo mencionaba Franz en su introducción, cómo hacemos esta relación funcional y óptima. Para nadie es un secreto el rol de los bosques de niebla, de los páramos en aquellos países andinos del trópico, de los humedales en la Patagonia y en muchas partes de Latinoamérica, y qué rol pueden jugar estos ecosistemas en función de servicios ecosistémicos y por tanto traer ahorros. Creo que la pregunta ahí es cómo es este balance adecuado entre lo gris y lo verde para lograr una optimización del sistema y por qué no unos ahorros considerables. Esto nos lleva a este concepto que para mí es tal vez uno de los más importantes y no muchas veces incluido en los planes maestros ni en los procesos de planificación de grandes proyectos. Es la integridad ecológica del sistema. Es un ecosistema y sus funciones realmente en su mejor estado y cómo éstas pueden ser afectadas por distintas actividades antrópicas, por distintos procesos de desarrollo y cómo realmente, insisto, no los consideramos cuando llega un momento de hacer una planificación hoy, en el mediano y en el largo plazo. Y esto, por supuesto, nos lleva a un desbalance que es en el que queremos trabajar fuertemente y es cómo hacemos para lograr mayores inversiones en ese espacio verde. Las grandes inversiones de infraestructura gris son necesarias, especialmente ahora en un mundo que cambia muy rápidamente el clima y en el cual tenemos que estar mucho más preparados desde el punto de vista de infraestructura para proveer servicios. Pero lo que pasa es que en este escenario verde la inversión es muy baja y nos puede dar un resultado aún mayor en términos de resiliencia y de los impactos esperados ante todos estos escenarios extremos que hemos visto en tantas presentaciones en esta reunión de Estocolmo. Bien, vamos a un caso que es una resolución que nació en Colombia hace varios años, es la resolución 907, que realmente invita a los prestadores del servicio de acueducto a de una manera voluntaria, porque ya lo hacen de manera obligatoria, a invertir en los recursos naturales. Lo cierto es que después de 5 años, la aplicación de esta resolución no ha sido muy efectiva. En realidad no hemos tenido esa inversión masiva que quisiéramos en los ecosistemas estratégicos de Colombia, que son muchos, y que realmente asegurarían por lo menos cantidad y calidad de una manera un poquito más balanceada. La resolución está ahí y lo que queremos desde TNC y con un grupo de actores es hacer un análisis muy profundo de qué ha fallado en la resolución, por qué no se ha logrado implementar como quisiéramos. Y ahí van a ver una serie de pasos que quieren realmente llevarnos a entender cuál es la ciencia que hay detrás, cómo hacemos para estimar la gran pregunta, ¿cuánto hay que invertir en la cuenca? ¿Y qué porcentaje de la tarifa puede ser esa inversión? ¿Cómo realmente aseguramos que esa inversión vaya efectivamente a los ecosistemas y no necesariamente a costos de operación? ¿Cómo hacemos para tejer una red entre esos operadores para que entiendan que si uno lo hace y tiene beneficios, realmente puede replicarse de una manera un poco más masiva, si se quiere, en el contexto colombiano? Hemos tomado muchos ejemplos de Brasil donde esto se ha trabajado ya hace varios años y hemos hecho interrelaciones entre empresas de acueducto para que entiendan realmente que no es un costo adicional, es una inversión en el futuro que por supuesto es políticamente muy sensible y muchas veces muy antipopular. Bueno, después de todo ese proceso, en realidad lo que queremos considerar es ciencia. TNC es una organización basada en ciencia y creemos que tenemos las herramientas necesarias para construir un caso en el que estimemos de manera adecuada el cuánto, el dónde y el por qué. Lo segundo es las capacidades de las empresas prestadoras. Ellos tienen un mandato muy específico que es proveer agua, proveer un buen servicio, pero no necesariamente una capacidad técnica de entender la funcionalidad ecosistémica que lo rodea. Redes y, por supuesto, casos exitosos para que sean replicados en un contexto primero local y después nacional. Creemos que esa es la manera de avanzar. Y finalmente, llevar esto a los reguladores. Queremos hacer casos donde se muestre que un regulador evidentemente va a hacer un mejor trabajo al balancear mejor las inversiones en la conservación de cuencas de una manera, digamos, mucho más eficiente y armónica, como nos lo mencionó Franz. Muchas gracias.
Gracias, Alejandro. For our final case study, we have Maria Apostolova, Regional Project Coordinator for the Amazon Cooperation Treaty Organization. Please note that this presentation and the rest of the session will take place in English.
Good afternoon. Let me see. My presentation is from a slightly different perspective since it focuses on financing for regional transboundary cooperation. And this implies some additional challenges and conditions that need to be in place in order to mobilize funding and execute it successfully. As one colleague in a previous session said, you need to spend $1 million to spend $1 billion. And I think for the Amazon, this is kind of underestimated. We really need to set the enabling environment. And this is where regional basin organizations have an important role to play. In the Amazon Cooperation Treaty Organization is the only intergovernmental organization which has a mission, a strategic agenda, and the membership of the 8 countries of the region, and providing a platform for regional cooperation and financing. This month in Brazil, the presidents of the Amazon countries met and signed the Belém Declaration, which is a document of more than 20 pages setting regional objectives and common commitments on issues relevant for the Amazon, also expanding the areas of work of the organization and institutionally strengthening ACTO. To facilitate the implementation of this new ambitious agenda, the declaration also envisions the establishment of a financial mechanism aimed at Amazon cooperation to ensure the means of raising funding and financing resources from different sources, including sources from the member states, international cooperation, development banks, and other donors. Also, the declaration invites the development banks of the member states to work in an integrated and concerned manner for a sustainable development of the region and through the formation of a green coalition. In terms more specifically for water, the declaration strengthens regional cooperation through the establishment of an Amazon network of water authorities of the ACTO member countries, which was created in Belém. So the agreement mandates and institutionality behind this declaration are part of this 1 or 10 million of strengthening the enabling environment for financing and executing regional incentives and projects. As you know, the Amazon is the largest